Right. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to our third installment of the 18F Design Speaker Series with Stephanie Hay, most excellent speaker and expert on the topic of content and
most excellent. That's so great.
We're very excited to have her here. There's a lot of people online. There's a bunch of different agencies that contacted us with their content teams to be able to watch this remotely.
Great.
So there's going to be a lot of people viewing. So
awesome.
Very excited to have you, and please welcome Stephanie.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so excited to be here. I even wore red, white, and blue. Do you see? It matches my proportion of. No, I guess we're not supposed to talk about this. Do you see? Anyway, okay, so thanks for having me. And I'm going to tell you about a time I was really only motivated to do a few things. One, I was watching a lot of Downton Abbey. I could not really get enough of those Granthams. For some reason, this was about the only thing I could bring myself to actually pay attention to for a certain period of time. And when I wasn't sitting around, I was probably at Topgolf. Does anybody know Topgolf? Yeah, man, Topgolf's great. Okay, for those who are unenlightened, let me enlighten you. Topgolf, really near my house in Alexandria, 2-level driving range. All of the balls have chips in them. You see they've got these targets in the ground, right? This is in Alexandria. Man, I wish I was Alexandria. Anyway, so you hit it out into one of the targets. It registers that the ball went to this X place within the target, and you've got a little computer monitor on your bay that tells you where it went. So you can work on your short game. You can get points. They come and serve you beer in Starbucks and all the things that you would never get on a regular golf course. That's why it's awesome. That's why it's awesome. But I found a lot of zen in just having to just hit the ball and just work on hitting the ball. Nothing bigger than that. And then I also laid around in my adult-sized beanbag chair and started playing a lot of video games. Because what I was in was what people would normally refer to as burnout. I had been doing 2 startups, one back-to-back. One was sort of the traditional, we're going to do some testing. We're going to find an audience. It's a very slow growth startup. And the other one, which came out of a co-working session, actually, that I was hosting, Fast Customer, was the sort of Silicon Valley, I guess, model startup, where we went and raised $750,000 for a mobile app that we had about 100,000 downloads in the first few months on, called Fast Customer, where you never had to wait on hold for customer service. And I had been doing this, both of these things, and trying to keep it together over about 2.5 years. And Fast Customer turned out to be a B2B model that I didn't really love, and we decided to part ways. And the other one actually kept going. The slow growth one actually kept going, and we hired a team to build it, and now it's off and running. But I was sort of in this place of now what? And so while I was playing these video games, I came across one called Animal Crossing. Does anybody know Animal Crossing? That's right. Okay, good. This is the onboarding experience of Animal Crossing. You have opened up your Nintendo DS, you're laying in your adult-sized beanbag chair, and this is what you see. Okay. What did you notice about this?
Funny.
Funny. Yep. What else? Interactive. Right. Talk a little bit more about that. It was like you were having a conversation with this little animal. I didn't pay her to say that, by the way. Just keep that. What else? What about the actual substance of the conversation? Okay.
Unfortunately, I noticed nothing but a whole bunch of little noises that sound like mice. I'm confused and I didn't even know what was funny.
You didn't know what was funny?
No.
Okay.
Now, I am a mother of 4 adult children, so maybe they would get it and maybe I just don't.
All right. Well, that's interesting. Did you know that the upper screen was the player and or was the game and the bottom screen was you player?
I did get that.
Okay.
So, yeah, a little bit.
Okay, cool. What else?
Gets you to reveal information in context.
Oh man, I didn't pay you to say that either. You guys, I'm just gonna get out of here. I'm just gonna give you my sides. Yes, that's right. It gives you information about who you are in context of a conversation, right? Doesn't say, give me everything about you before we can actually start having a conversation. So in order to do that, what had to happen? What did the designers do here that involves risk?
Start the game without information.
They started the game without information. And what about the language of this?
They had to come up with a tone in the first question.
That's right. That's right. How did they even, and what gender you were?
It doesn't say, give me everything about you before.
Oh, geez, that's what it sounded like. Oh.
It tried to guess whether if you were a boy, you would tend to say you had a cool name as opposed to a girl, you would say you had a cute name.
Exactly.
So it made certain predictions.
Could you repeat a bit so that people...
Sure, yeah. What happened is that they made the assumption that if you said cute, you were more likely to be a girl. And if you said cool, you were more likely to be a boy. They made that assumption in their design, in a content design. By doing that, if they were right, what would have happened?
Seamless experience.
Seamless experience, that's right. A totally delightful experience. This thing knows me. And when they are wrong, what happens?
It's still natural language.
It's
The
still
character feels
natural
bad.
language. That's right. The character responds, oh, I'm sorry, my bad. It's still natural. It's still regular conversation. And that's really one of the most magical changes I've gone through in my career, is to understand that we can actually design conversations. They've been doing this for a long time, the video game industry. And it actually increases retention and engagement. This is how Hollywood designs their scripts. This is how Choose Your Adventure, your own adventure books came to be, right? People designing conversations. And understanding at each point along the way, if somebody makes a decision, what is the outcome? What is the resulting conversation that would come from that? To do the work to design a lot of web-like conversations rather than one conversation where if you get outside of that conversation, you have done something wrong. So I want to talk about 2 key design approaches from the video game industry. One is, along the same lines, nailing the story first. To make it so that your design feels like a conversation before there is ever an interface. Before you have created the layout and structured the things, you've actually designed a conversation, and then you've been able to sit down and test that conversation with people to see if you guys are even able to talk, to know that you're in the right ballpark. And you can do this completely agnostic of any design work, UX work in the traditional flow. So this is what I started doing immediately. And it was based on what I learned from video game industry, who they were hiring to do this work. They have quest designers, game writers who are designers, narrative writers for interactive media, and they have common elements like this: excellent storytelling, dialogue writing, and editing skills. Experience as a writer. Successful candidate will be able to write compelling narrative-driven scripts for an exciting next-gen learning product. You have to write the script for the product. You have to actually design the product. This is content as product design, not content as fill in the placeholder text. This isn't a piece of real estate. This is design. So how do I start doing this, right? Well, this was aligned with some of the thinking I had where I met Ben, spent a few years as co-organizer of the DC Lean Startup Circle. So I already had some tactics in mind about how we could test content, but I hadn't really applied it to the design experience yet. So what I learned is that by doing that, by using content to actually design, it was the lowest risk way to design. We could do it before a kickoff call with a client even happened. So I was working with an agency called Happy Cog out of Philadelphia on the Ben & Jerry's website redesign really shortly after this. It was some of the beginning work that I was getting back into a few years ago. And what we decided to do was get on the phone with all their stakeholders before the kickoff call even happened. And we said, why do people come to Ben & Jerry's website? What is their intention for being there? What do they want to do? What's the conversation they want to be in with you? And they said, well, they usually come here to look for flavors. We say, okay, great. Now we know that. What's the kind of conversation you want to have with customers? And they said, we want to really talk about our values and the things that we hold dear as a company because that's what makes us different from other companies. And that's also why a lot of customers choose us. We said, okay, why don't we start designing the homepage in a Google Doc? Here's what your homepage might look like. And it's the content, their values, with a headline here that says, making the best possible ice cream in the nicest possible way. Using language that is real language. It feels like a natural conversation you might have with somebody in real life. And then we wrote natural language for their values. And then we moved it into design, and this is actually the homepage today. We make the best possible ice cream in the best possible way. And then the design knew exactly what the content was in order to create a more visually compelling experience. So decided to actually find some thumbnails that would be representative of each of those values. And then the values content was there, so they could plug it in. So we actually started in Google Doc in day one. It ended up being in the final design weeks later, and the entire design went quicker because the designers knew what the content was. They knew how to bring it to life then.
I just want to say, I had a real life experience just like that just recently. I work for the IRS and I work on the website. And so we did a whole lot of research based on what customers were looking for in this particular area of the website. And based on that data, we came up with content, and we literally structured a whole new page of content. And then we met with the designer. So just yesterday, a couple of days ago, we met with the designers. They came back with a design in a couple of days using all of that new content. And it's literally a brand new page already. I mean, just like that.
And it answers the real questions that people have because you use the data.
Yep.
And the designers, how did they feel? Wait, you might want to give her back that microphone for a second.
Sorry.
Yeah. How did the designers feel working with content that was already validated?
Excited, and they appreciated it so much. And they said it a couple of times. So, and they said, you guys have already done the hard work. So it's really going to be easy for us to, and we didn't even have to do like low fidelity designs. We were able to go right into high fidelity designs because we had the content already.
That's right.
So it did make a difference.
Exactly. What's your name?
Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole. Awesome. Great. So this was only one side of the story though, right? Where there was an interactive opportunity here was to think about why people were coming to the site. They were coming to the site to find flavors. And so we knew that's what they actually needed to win. If we think about those customers as heroes of their own story, because that's what we are, right? Then what they really needed to win was to find flavors. Where's the flavor? Where's the local scoop shop? Where's the place I can go get my favorite flavor locally? So what we decided to do was design in the Google Doc how we might display, how we might take some of the geolocated information about the person who's at the website and actually display information about where you can find the flavors. So we, instead of designing first where you can actually find it and then trying to plug in the content later and realizing that there's a lot of content that you need and a lot of overlap, like you're going to say map over and over again, right? You're going to actually need mailing addresses. You're going to need to have email addresses or phone numbers, something like that. We start thinking through what the content of displaying how to find a flavor might look like. And then in the final design, it looks like this. Taking your information, making an assumption about where you want to find a flavor, There's your local scoop shop versus pint sellers. You can select the flavor that you want. And then there's all the information. It started in a Google Doc. It started by thinking, what does the hero really need to win? The hero needs a location. What does that mean? What does that look like? So once we had started to work in this way with customers or with clients and with design teams, and it started really was snowballing, right? Working this way, low risk, really fast, focusing on what the hero needs to win. Realized it really wasn't enough because, and we did do this, we could map out the entire content, the entire conversation, and put it up there. But it didn't quite feel the same way as that onboarding process. That onboarding process does something unique, which is that it designs, this is what video games do in general, it designs for discovery. Along the way, you're going to discover a little bit more. As you discover a little bit more, you're going to discover a little bit more. It doesn't try to give you everything that you need up front so that you can make a choice. It edits itself out a bit. It makes some assumptions here so that the hero feels like she is winning the more she discovers those things. That's what's actually delightful. Like, we use that term a lot in the industry, design for delight. But it is delightful to discover something. And actually, science shows it's memorable. That's what increases engagement and retention. So
would it be
yeah.
safe to say that in any content, in any substance, that the reader is always the hero, or only in this case?
Reader is always the hero.
Okay, that's a good.
Reader is always the hero. Great question, Nicole. In this book, Make It Stick, which is a little academic, but I totally recommend it anyway. Science is Successful Learning. What the authors have found is that by quizzing people over time, the over time factor, the in the moment, I'm not quite ready to answer this, I'm going to try and muddle through and figure it out, is what increases retention, information retention and engagement. It also increases satisfaction because nobody's trying to tell it to me so that I can do the thing and then be done with the thing. They give me just enough to try and figure it out on my own. And the more that I try to figure it out on my own, and the more that I actually win, because you've given me something I can actually do. I got to figure it out, but you've given it to me at the level that I am right now, which is what video games do. The more that I feel compelled to move forward. So teaching over time is what improves retention. This is something that we're struggling with Fast Customer, that startup I mentioned. You don't have to wait on hold for customer service. What we found is that when you found out that there was an app out there that did this, you would download it. Somebody would tell you about it, you see it on the news, you would download Fast Customer. But we would sit in your app graveyard. We would not actually be used because you didn't need us at that moment. You liked the idea, but you didn't need to call customer service in that moment. So how could we actually fix this? How could we improve retention? Well, what we decided to do was a couple things. One is that we added an option to make a test call, because you don't have to make a call, but if you decided to make a test call and we routed it to it was actually my co-founder's son, and then called you back and said, this is how it's going to work. You're going to tap that button, your phone's going to ring, you're going to pick up, and there's going to be a real human there getting ready to help you. That this actually increased retention by 30%, to give them an experience in the moment that wasn't the real experience, but was a test. We also added an onboarding experience. When you downloaded us, that you had, this is again like thinking about that choose your own adventure style book. We knew that you had an option here. You either wanted to make a call right now or you didn't. That's it, right? So we ask you for that. We are glad you found us. Are you looking for a specific company to call right now? Yes or no? If you hit no, which most people would, then we would ask them, okay, which mobile carrier do you use? Now, we know because this is a mobile app that they have a mobile provider. This was an easy assumption to make. And also picking just the top 4, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon, not all of them, but the top 4 would get the majority of people. So we started here. And when they chose one, we would then show them a screen that says, okay, we put them in your fast call list, which was our version of favorites. But it turns out people didn't like the word favorites associated with customer service. So we came up with a new name called Fast Call, and this is how we taught them what it meant. We put them in your fast call list so you can quickly call them later. And this increased retention by about 40%, the onboarding experience. We also added some things like we thought maybe as an experiment, getting people to give us a happy face, a sort of so-so face, and a sad face, that maybe this would increase retention. People would just be mad at a company and hit the sad face. I hate this company. No effect, none at all. People wanted to make a call. People want to make a call. Also, the second key piece of this, designing for discovery, is that we need to provide answers in the moment when users are most likely to have questions. And this only happens when you take the time up front to design a conversation. Only then can you know when customers or users are going to have those questions. If you're there with the answer, and if you're actually even there a step ahead with the answer, it feels even more seamless. That's what's really delightful. We found is that there was actually a panic moment happening with Fast Customer. When you did want to make a call, this is what the old view would look like. Verizon customer service is open. You want to call customer service. You'd tap that button, have someone call me, and you'd see this resulting screen. That's it. You can close the app anytime. We'll have someone from Verizon customer service call you, and the caller ID will display this. If a real person isn't on the line, simply hang up. We use multiple attempts to reach someone for you. What was happening is that when somebody would tap, have someone call me, they would immediately, as soon as they saw that that's it on the resulting screen, bring the phone up to their ear. Because this was a new experience, they didn't know what to expect, and they were panicking. What's happening? Am I supposed to? And the writer in me is saying, read all the text. Read all the text I wrote for you, right? All the answers are there. But this was happening. That's all I needed to see to know that there was a problem on the previous screen. Something was not setting the expectation accordingly. So we did a little revision here. We have two departments for them. Calling customer service, instead of saying have someone call me, we said have them call you. Like that little shift in language actually made it seem like you do this. I'm not asking, like you do this for me. Have them call you. Okay, we'll have them call me. We're on it. Cancel call. And it turns out by displaying the same information in a checkbox, flow-based architecture here, that people stop bringing the phone to their ears. They'd say, have someone call you, and they say, we're on it, and then they would sit and watch the thing, and they go, huh, that's cool. And then at the very bottom, it says, you can close this app. Because now they're fine. Now that's actually the moment when they need to know what to do next. It says, you can close this app or see how this works. And 2/3 of people would click see how it works. This, by contrast, that's a conversation they weren't ready to have yet. You can close this app anytime. They don't know what's happening yet. So they would see that and freak out. We also added expectations for them around how long they should expect to wait on hold or how long until their phone would call back. So 13.5 minutes for USAA in case you were curious. And we also would only ask for their phone number when they were ready to make a call. Now, surprisingly, when we first started, I mean, traditional MVP, we said, give us your phone number. People would give us their phone number. People would give us their phone number. But we didn't need their phone number. So this was a company choice. This was us saying, we don't actually need all these phone numbers. If somebody's not making a call. The other side of this is that it was solving a real problem that we were having, which is that people were saying, your thing doesn't work. This doesn't work. I made a test call, or I made a call and I didn't get the call back. We say, what number did you use? They would give us a number that was not in our database. Like, this number doesn't actually exist in our database. What did you do here? And it turns out that people, when they would download the app, would enter the number of their home, and then they would go to work 6 months later, use the app, and assume their work number would ring. I don't know why, but they did. So it actually solves two things by asking them for a number here. We don't have phone numbers we don't need. and you have the phone number in the flow when you are getting ready to get a phone call back, you have the phone number top of mind. So cut down on the number of bad reviews too. Now, this is a new way of thinking for me, certainly, or was at the time, content defining the structure versus the other way around. Because as a content strategist, I loved working in information architecture. I would structure the heck out of everything. And I would go to clients and say, okay, we've got all these pages. Now we got to get content in there. We got to plug in content here. Because that's what we need for this great structure, right? But hardly ever did that manifest itself into a successful project or an enjoyable experience. Content was always the last thing. People didn't know what to put there. We'd end up being against a launch deadline and say, like, well, just put something there, like a paragraph, and maybe the designer would write it. Maybe I would write it as the project manager when I was a project manager at agencies. And so being able to take away that structure is we as humans, it's not natural. We as humans want to categorize things as soon as we have them. Here's this information, and this information fits here, and this could go here, and that could. It's working against that human nature to say, I don't know what I'm working with yet. I'm going to write a bunch of content in a Google Doc. It's going to be 15 pages of content. And once I got it all out there, then I'm going to figure out how it all fits together. And until then, I'm going to temper myself from trying to structure. The outcomes of working in this way, as I've already mentioned, this is the lowest risk, lowest cost way to design because you can do it in text files and you can do it together and everyone can do it together. You don't need to have an HCI background to be able to do this. It ends up resulting in more collaborative design because you don't need to have that specialty. You just need to be able to write an email. You need to be able to communicate with each other to say, this is sort of the thing that we're thinking about. You should be able to read it top down. Sure, there's going to be a lot of notes in it. You're going to have potential different avenues for other conversations that could happen depending upon the choices someone would make. But at the end of the day, this is all text. You should be able to read this, right? So you can invite people in who might normally not be part of that process that early. And then when it starts to get baked, they go, well, why wasn't I brought in early enough? And you're like, well, we were still planning it out. But this is part of it. This is design is planning. It's all part of it. As a result of people being involved from the beginning and being able to understand what this looks like, we end up having faster approvals and we get to market faster. And finally, because it ends up feeling like a conversation that transitions over time and channels, there's higher engagement, it's higher retention. We've designed the kind of conversation we want to have with people, and the interface and the channels bring it to life. The drip campaign makes it part of that, right? Whatever the elements are for distribution or engaging, whatever that technology might be, at the core, it's still a conversation. That content has got to connect. So we start with that. What do we want to do to connect? And using the data is an obvious starting point, right? We already know what people are calling into Capital One about the calls to the call centers. We know what the top questions are that they call in to ask about. What if we gave them more detailed information on the contact page? Not on a page of FAQs, but on the contact page in the moment when they actually are looking for the phone number to call. We just cut down on call volume like that. Anyway, got to be brave enough, though, to change how we work. I was in a moment. Like, I was in a moment in my life where I knew I had 10 years of experience doing this stuff. I knew how to work, and I was actually bored with it, which is another reason why I started getting into startups, because they were so new, and it sort of got me out of the way I knew how to work, the artifacts I knew how to create, the meetings I knew how to schedule. Got me into thinking about content as design and changed the way I work to be exploratory every day, to experiment every day, which was way more fun. People like working in that way too. Way more fun for the people I work with. Being brave, changing how we work means making the content the center, wrapping the design around it. This is how I sleep every night, no? Isn't that a comfortable position? So here I was like a few years ago looking at those job descriptions that I brought up earlier and being jealous and thinking maybe I should move to Seattle and work for Nintendo. Maybe I could get a job at Bethesda Games up in Bethesda. Like, maybe I could go work for a game company. And now, 4 years later, I'm making jobs. Like, Capital One institutionally supports me building a content strategy practice of awesome people to design with content, to take that paradigm for the video game industry and apply it to what we're working on. So right now, I'm looking for people who will dig into what who our customers are and the language they use. So look at that, the analytics, to sit in usability testing and pay attention to the language that they use, to not be distracted by the stuff that they're looking at as they're trying to interact, but instead to listen to the questions and make sure that those questions then are represented in the conversation of the interface, to establish cohesive conversations with people across time and channels, to test their content, iterate on it till it's clear, to help the design teams understand that that iterative process is not just about design, but it is about content, study analytics, to use the data. That's what will help us drive decisions that we're making. And to actually, like, as a company, be brave enough to use the language. I mean, this is a huge hurdle, especially for regulated industries, okay? To be able to use the exact words that our customers use takes a lot of bravery and institutional support, to not formalize them and further remove ourselves from the responsibility of being too raw, to really communicating in that really connecting way. That's what separates that, because so few people are brave enough to do it. Like, that's what separates. When you love something that you've actually interacted with, it's because you feel like it connected with you, like it knew who you were. Yep.
I just wanted to say another point on that. That's one of the things we also did, is we looked through the data to see how the people referred to what they were looking for,
Yep.
so that we could change it and call it that versus what we thought that they wanted to find.
You're with the IRS? Good for you. That's awesome. Okay, good.
I came from the Postal Service and their website.
For the video, the IRS is changing the language on their website to match the terms that real people use that they are finding in search and other analytics. So I want to show you one of the ways that we actually do this tactically. They're called content prototypes, and they look a lot like those Choose Your Own Adventure books. The content prototypes are conversations we want to have with people at each step in their journey. So if you have something in mind about, like, paying a bill, right? What is the thing that most people are going to want to do? Let's map out that conversation. And then we start getting into sub-conversations to start creating that web of conversations, in case, if you don't follow that, what are the majority of people going to do path. It really follows this paradigm. If you've never read a Choose Your Own Adventure book, grab one. They're probably 30 cents at your used bookstore these days, but there are like a ton of them. Actually, the original author just passed away. It's very sad. But anyway, so you actually start reading 2-3 pages in, you're presented an option. If you want to kill Zoltar, go to page 50. If you want to have coffee with Zoltar, go to page 43. And there's a resulting story. So we take that approach. We have a team out in San Francisco called the D3 team, and they're working on innovative ideas, things that you might not expect from a bank. And one of them just released a beta, and it's called Ideas. And there are things to do or places to go or concerts to see this weekend based on your purchasing behavior. So what they had been doing for months was iterating on the design, and they felt like they were spinning their wheels. Something wasn't right. Something wasn't right about the design. They kept changing pieces of the design, and they kept asking questions like, did you understand this? Is this the right kind of thing for you? And they were finding that they weren't getting conclusive feedback. They were just spinning their wheels. So I ended up talking to Carrie Fior, who is their product manager, and I said, why don't you create a content prototype? What it does is it mimics the interface. We're going to get rid of the interface. We're not even going to think about the design anymore right now. Write a content prototype that mimics the interface, and then sit down and have conversations with people using this prototype and ask them questions and see which options that they might select and which ones really resonate with them and which ones are confusing, and note the questions that they have along the way, because that'll help us inform what marketing kind of things we might want to create later. So he did that. And what it ends up looking like is this. There's some principles that he put at the top, things that he wants to follow. And ultimately, all of these things in yellow are the main touch points. So there might be a touch point here that's called tap for details. And the trigger here is that the person has browsed 6 ideas and hasn't tapped. Then there's copy that's resulting from that. Want to keep this idea for later, pull down or tap the heart to save it. And then the feedback, if they do that, is sweet. So he's starting to play around with different language that didn't actually exist in the design, but it mimicked the design, what the interactivity of the design would be. Yeah?
This looks a lot like, still like an outline of the interface. It doesn't look like an outline of the user experience, like a journey map where you say, well, what do you expect to happen at this point? Or what would you like to see? And
that's right.
So is it?
This isn't a journey map. No, okay. This is an interface. This is an outline of the interface. There's no interface. So it removes that from the process of testing, and it removes that from the user's view as well. They focus entirely on the language. So by going through this, they end up getting to iterate very quickly in real time between interviews too. Like somebody says sweet, like I don't know what sweet means. I don't know what. So then they change the language. They sit down and do it again. And what ended up happening is that they found the voice. They found the voice of this. And that's what, I don't know how to make sure that this is loud enough. You might want to bring the microphone up here. Let's hope that this works.
Hi, I'm Carrie. I'm a PM based in San Francisco with the D3 team. D3 makes design and data-driven products could make, but that don't resemble anything you would traditionally expect from a bank. We're about to launch a private beta of our iOS app. It's called Ideas. We're shipping it to about 5,000 card customers. And content prototyping was super crucial to the product design we're shipping with. Before we began building Ideas, we did a lot of customer research and came to know our persona, Mary, pretty well. But it wasn't clear what the voice of the software should be. We have lots of experience prototyping UI concepts and feature concepts. Prototyping to find the voice of a piece of software was something new for us. We decided to A/B test 2 types of copy with a bunch of Marys for all the crucial touch points. And after a day of this, I think we were pretty confident that we found the voice of the app. It's conversational, it's casual, it has a tinge of manners, even a little bit of humor. I think we spent a total of a few hours mocking up the A/B tests and a day for the interviews. And I think overall, this spared us a ton of speculation over what kind of copy would be the best for our app, what kind of copy would Mary like to be spoken to with as she's using the app. For sure, it's going to evolve once we're in market, but as we come to the end of our build and we're about to ship our MVP, it's awesome not having to deal with the churn that would inevitably come with speculation over copy. Content prototyping for the win.
That's right. That's our new tagline, I think. Content prototyping for the win.
Say it one more time.
Content prototyping for the win.
Oh, for the win. Okay.
That's right. So what he ended up doing was removing what was months of design iteration and brought it back to the content, which is something that we typically don't do. Once it's in a fidelity of any sort, we're like, oh, well, we can only tweak the content here and there. So he just brought it back to the content entirely, and they ended up changing the design. This is the designer. Having real content up front meant I could focus on designing a real experience right from the start. I wish we'd always worked this way. Like once she had been designing it, once it was 8 months. It was 8 months of iteration. And then a few hours to mock up the test, a day of testing, and they changed it as a result. So my point in bringing up this example is to say that it is great when we can start right from the get-go to create content with nothing else except the thing we have in our heads about how this should exist and what we want to test. And then we iterate on that with designers and we write out the entire conversation, and then we move it into some higher fidelity. Even when it's in higher fidelity, it can get over-engineered. More people can get involved in it, can get off track. People can come and go out of project teams. And then you can still bring it back to the content. Yes, it's extra work. He had to sit and write content. He had to take pieces from the interface and put them in a different format. But that was what was required to separate the design from the content, to be able to really nail what the conversation should be. And in doing this, that content, again, defined the structure. So they changed the design. They found the voice of the app. They made changes to the design based on how people responded to the content. But here's the thing. Content doesn't have to be, we've been really talking about, I'm a journalist, I'm talking about this in terms of the written word, but it doesn't even have to be actual words, right? Oh man, I'm totally blowing your minds right now. No? Woo! No? Okay. Does anybody know Genova Chen? Any video gamers in there? Okay, so Genova Chen was a student at University of Southern California, interactive media program, and he created this game on his own, Flower. And it ended up being so widely popular. Do you know this now? You're shaking your head? Yeah. It ended up being so widely popular that Sony got a hold of him as a grad student and said, hey, do you want to put together a team and develop a game for us? He was like, oh, I don't know. I'm pretty busy. Like, obviously, yes. Okay. So what Genova Chen does is take some of the concepts from his early MVP Flower and decides, how is this actually going to scale? And he made one really critical decision. He decided that he wanted to measure everything that his team was designing against a singular outcome, which is that the person playing the game would have an emotional response to the game at the conclusion of the game. Okay? It takes about 3 hours to play the game. This is what the game looks like. How do you feel? Calm. Has anybody played this game? What'd you think of this game, Nick?
It's really interesting. It's really different.
When you finished playing the game, how did you feel?
I felt good.
You felt calm. Did you feel zen? There is no tutorial in this entire game. Nothing pops up on screen in the entire game. It's about 3 hours to get through the game. Nobody tells you where to go or why. There's a mountain in the background with a point of light, and you go toward it, and you just keep going toward it. The storytelling is purely about the game experience. These are the reviewers of the game. These are professional video game reviewers. This is what they say about it, right? But here's the thing. It's true, because when I got done playing it, I bawled like a baby. I bawled. I was so stunned at how I was feeling. I took a selfie of myself bawling and was like, you guys, I played this game. It was crazy. I got done. Because what happens is, like, you learn things as you go along. You discover that the scarf flowing in the wind behind you actually is an indicator of your health and how high you can jump. And you find out that you can make these notes, these little like musical notes come out, and they're sort of calls in a way. And then you find other players come in and out of the journey along the way, and you assume that they're computer-generated players. And then at the very end, you realize that they are other players who've come in and out of your life, and it's just like real life, and it's so beautiful. And it like blew me away, right? It was incredible. was incredible.
What
But-
platform is it? What-
Sony,
So for PS.
PlayStation. Yeah, that's right. But that's what this was. It was nailing the story, even if the story wasn't written. This is something that we probably won't be doing a lot of, but it's sort of the meta example of what it means to tell a great story, to do all of the work that his team did a year over the timeline that they had been contracted to deliver. They stripped everything out. They designed, they iterated, they kept stripping things out. They ended up making it that Zen Garden was what they were going for. If anything didn't fit this Zen Garden philosophy and make the user facilitate an emotional response, they removed it. They were fiercely editing all along the way so that they could really focus on the story. And then along the way, they would only insert things that were delightful to discover. And they didn't try to tell you about it. Like, hey, look what we did. You should do this now. They just let you discover it, which is why it is so emotional, because it's such a powerful thing. And who knows, maybe if we do this, we'll end up making users cry too, but for all the right reasons. Thanks, everybody.
So do you have a few minutes for Q&A?
Sure, yeah,
All right, cool. I'll try to run the mic around so we can capture the
okay.
feed.
Yeah, if you have any more questions, that's my email.
Put it over towards you.
Yeah, what's your name?
My name is Erica, and I have 2 questions.
Okay.
You can pick which one.
You give me both. I need
don't-
both.
I'm struggling with which one to go with first.
Okay.
One is I'm a sub-program of a larger agency, so I'm redoing my web pages. So how would you take this concept and sort of first steps and implement it within the agency? Would you do focus
I would do
groups
exactly what
within?
Nicole has just done.
And then my second question before I lose it is I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect, and I'm thinking more action oriented, between the content that can be created, at least in the federal space, ends up growing into multiple paragraphs and everyone really wants to say everything. So how to take this concept, but then also make it actionable, because you don't want to post 5 paragraphs of content within your design, but that's typically how it sort of finds itself. So how would you?
Well, you might want to post 5 paragraphs. What's wrong with 5 paragraphs?
On every web page? I don't.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem is with that. Do you know, is it like a design problem?
Well, in different thought processes, users don't necessarily absorb content that way, especially on the web, and especially when you're thinking about your mobile customers. And so having all of this heavy content on every web page can be overwhelming, according to other studies. You may disagree, but that's just what I've understood.
Here's what's overwhelming about a lot of content on a page is when it's a lot of content on a page that doesn't say anything.
Yeah, like plainwriting.gov might help.
Plainwriting.gov?
Yeah,
Is that a thing?
That is a thing.
Oh my gosh!
Is that right? Plainwriting.gov?
Plainlanguage.gov. Okay, cool.
Okay, so I just learned about it too, but it's definitely helped with not having a whole bunch of content that doesn't say anything. So using the guidelines for that might be a start.
The change here, I hear what you're
plain language.
I hear what you're saying, but here's the thing. Ultimately, you can have a couple ways of going about this, right? There's a lot to be said for designing content across pages because you can track who's getting there. Then if you are able to analyze who those people are, you can learn more about who those people are. That's ultimately why you would want to spread content. Like if there's, everybody wants to read this. Now, if you're interested in this, go here. If you're interested in that, go here. If you're, and then you track and see how much. That's one way that you can say, look, we offered this as an option and nobody's going to it. So let's just kill it. It's not a thing. It's not valuable to people. Or it's, let's make a new decision based on the fact that a lot of people are going here and not here. So there's a lot to be said from just like an experimental perspective to separate content. When it comes to actually like, what do I want on the page? I'm gonna say, don't structure, don't add the layer of like, I don't like structuring first. There shouldn't be 5. I know that this was just a high level example, but there should be as much content as there needs to be. And that's the hardest part for us as designers to accept, because we want to say everything in one perfect tagline. I mean, an entire advertising industry exists because of this human need to like want to nail it in one sentence, right? But not everything can be explained in one sentence, especially really technical stuff. I mean, imagine if somebody in our case, like imagine if somebody has been married to her husband for 50 years and he passes away and he has done all the finances. How are we going to work with this person and get her involved in a way that she has never had to be involved? What's the kind of language that we would use with that person? This is the kind of like you can't just nail it in one sentence. You can't just give them a few things. You have to really know what the outcome is of that. And that's where change management comes into play, because the people who you're working with, the agencies that you're working with, they have to be willing to say real things to really know what is the outcome that we're trying to drive toward versus just publishing content. And if you can get them there and talk about the importance of that and show that through engagement, through that test, that's the best way to start moving them toward that outcome. Ben?
How much knowledge, like kind of empathetic understanding?
You were holding that like you are a rock star, by the way. That's
Yeah,
incredible microphone position. Yeah, there you go.
How much knowledge of your users, like customers, like empathy, like real understanding, did you find you need to know before you begin to try to design a conversation? Tons.
Yeah. And here's an example. So as the writer, I would write for myself. What would I want to say? Okay. And then I go in, I try to have the conversation. It only takes a few people before I realize, holy cow, the context of these people's lives prohibits them from being able to hear the tone that I'm trying to convey here, right? I'm trying to be friendly, but you just got locked out because you didn't know your username because of a technical issue that we are still trying to resolve, all right? And I'm trying to like, oh, it's okay, come back in a little bit. And this person is so pissed that I sound patronizing now, right? So it absolutely requires an iterative, my point is that even if you didn't know anything and you just wrote it for yourself, you still have to get out there, and if it doesn't, that's a problem. Like, it will shift the way that you actually write. Another way to do it is to have all the research up front and to read through it, understand it, have that nuance of like, where is this person coming from? We have a ton of videos. Capital One is amazing at having, actually going out and sitting and taking video of people who are like trying to get out of debt and people who are, who just lost their jobs and the things that are really like crushing their lives. It's not even about the money, it's about their lives. And so you watch that stuff, you can't write any other way than to think about them, to have those sound bites in your head then. It changes the way you write, but you would still have to get out and test it again. So it's just a never-ending process.
I love back and forth conversation. I was just thinking, I love the beginning about where you were talking discovery and that delighting people, because I was thinking about, TurboTax, like it's asking you questions. You don't know why it's asking you this one and then this one and then this one.
That's right.
But I can answer it just at the right time. And then I discover at the end that it's filled out my tax form for me and it's awesome.
That's right.
But have you ever found that people may not want to engage in a conversation? I'm thinking about coming from the government's perspective, and why are you asking me how old I am or where I live or what my income is? And how do you overcome that or build trust so that they do engage?
That's right. Build trust is, we're a bank. Like we have that same thing, right? Build trust is this, it's what we're all striving for. The best way to do it is be transparent as possible. There are things like you were just talking about, the designing for discovery. There are things that we don't necessarily need to explain up front. Where I would say the trust barrier is when you ask for the thing up front, they don't complete it, and you know that they're not completing it. That's where I would add more, like, here's why. The Netflix example, when you start to sign up for Netflix, this was years ago, before Netflix was Netflix, and you were an early adopter, and you were giving them information and giving them your credit card number, they on the other side would always have these reassurances as to why they were asking for this and how they weren't going to use your data and the ways that they were going to use the information that you were